It is a great joy. It is a great joy to be here, to have prayed with you, to chat with you, and to chat with you later, and here to share a few thoughts. I am going to speak about the issue of abortion first, and then as Bishop Hugh said, speak about contraception, and more positively the vision that the Catholic Church has of love between the sexes, and the place of sex within that, okay, and how contraception simply can't work within that. But the Church has reasons for saying this, and that's why I want to give a bit of a systematic look at that. I hope it won't be too laboured. But let's start now with contraception, with abortion. And let us start on Mount Sinai very briefly with Moses. Bishop Hugh has already mentioned the commandments, and I think that's where we have to start. Moses on Mount Sinai, that was the day God gave the 10 Commandments, which was part of the covenant he made with his people. Okay, that was the point at which the Hebrews became a nation. It was then that they were known as Israelites. Why was that? Because God had given them, through Moses, not just a set of arbitrary rules and regulations, as they can so often be portrayed, dry rules to live by and generally ruin your life by, make them miserable. It was a way of life. And that's very important, I think. The hand of God had miraculously freed them from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. And now here, if they wanted to remain free, if they wanted to remain in that freedom, then these 10 words, if you like, would show them the way. The gift of these commandments was the gift of God himself and his holy will, as the Catechism tells us. It was God revealing to his people the kind of God he is and the kind of God he wants to have with his people. Other peoples and tribes would look at the Israelites and recognize them because of the way they lived. So it makes no sense to look at the 5th commandment, you shall not kill, and stemming from that, the whole issue of abortion, in too narrow a context. You shall not kill is obviously a very negative thing and speaks of a boundary which cannot be crossed. But implicitly, however, in the words of the Gospel of Life, Evangelium Vitae, which was an encyclical Pope John Paul wrote, Blessed John Paul wrote in 1995, and which we are named after, he said implicitly it encourages a positive attitude of absolute respect for life. It leads to the promotion of life and to progress along the way of a love which gives, receives, and serves. There is a world of a difference between being anti-abortion and pro-life. We are anti-abortion, of course we are, but the command to honor the sanctity of life means so much more than that. It's about caring for, protecting, and nourishing human life, our neighbour, and taking seriously our responsibility towards them, okay, from the very beginning of life at conception right through to its natural end. And it has to be said as well, this obligation to protect life does not come from that source alone. The Church teaches and has always taught that the sanctity of human life is part of natural law. It is written on the hearts of all men and women, believers and non-believers alike. So don't be corralled into, oh, you're just a Catholic, you're just a Christian, you're obviously going to say that. This is a truth that stands alone, irrespective of what you believe, and it is written in the hearts of all mankind. So you don't need faith to come to the conclusion that human life should be defended and protected. For us Christians, however, human life has an altogether deeper dimension. In Evangelium Vitae, Blessed John Paul writes that this present time in life, or this present life in time, rather, on earth, is the fundamental condition, the initial stage and an integral part of the entire unified process of human existence. In other words, our life here on earth is part of something much greater, even more magnificent, which is our eternal life with God, which he destined for us from the very beginning. So sometimes, our lives seem to us to be very small, even paltry, but insignificant. But to that great, why? Why am I here? that humanity cries out with every now and then, God answered definitively in the person of Jesus Christ. In one absolutely pivotal moment in human history and in the whole life of the universe, God became man. He lived among us, a seemingly, by the way, paltry, small, insignificant existence, and he died a shameful death. Yet in that living, in that dying, and in that rising to new life, he forged a new union between God and man, and everything that went before and everything that would go after would now be caught up in God, in the very life of God. So we, all of us here and everyone, exist because God wants to adopt us as sons and daughters in his Son and have life with him forever, to live with him forever. So all I'm saying is, when we are pro-life, the life we serve is one that goes well beyond the confines of this earth. In fact, what we're doing is serving Christ himself. When we protect and promote the life of the tiniest wee embryo, or if we give an encouraging word to the poorest wee mum or the anxious mum, it is Christ we serve. It is Christ we serve. So when we talk about life, this is the significance we attach to it. Okay then, what about abortion? You know, an awful lot is said on this issue in politics, in the classroom, in the pub. The words are often fueled by all sorts of agendas. Many folk hit you with sound bites and slogans they've picked up, never really having formulated ideas of their own. Abortion is a woman's right to choose. Classic soundbite. They say it, they haven't thought about it. These slogans are quick, they're convenient, they're ready-made, and they stop us having to think about a subject which, let's be honest, isn't very nice anyway. Nobody really wants to talk about this. It's not a very congenial subject, but it's something we have to talk about. In any event, there's a lot of heat around this subject and very little light. Contradictions abound, and it's good to be aware of them. So there are two recent examples. First is the Paralympics. You know what I'm going to say here. The national enthusiasm that surrounded the Paralympics was quite just, and it was fantastic to see. But this in a country whose laws allow for people with any kind of disability, and I mean like a cleft palate, to be aborted right up until birth. What are we celebrating here? These are the very people we try to root out while they're still in the womb and abort them. So that's one craziness, to name 400. The other that I wanted to mention was a recent BBC report on the one-child policy in China. And the journalist was there, and he wanted us to see and to be aghast and be horrified at the pressure put on women in China to abort. While all the while here, under the veneer of democracy and respectability and, everything marvelous, the coercion and the pressure put on women to have an abortion is only less blatant, to be honest. It's insanity. I'm saying all of this because, abortion is actually a matter of human life or death. It's really important, and it affects every one of us. All of us here will know somebody who has had an abortion. We may not be particularly aware of that fact, but it is so prevalent. It has touched so many of us that we will know people. It demands, therefore, that we really engage our hearts and minds. It demands that we be objective and that we hold on to our principles and that we lend clarity to a subject that is so often stifled by irrational emotion and feeling and pure subjectivity. Alongside that, however, it demands that we truly understand the pressures put on women and the underlying issues that surround abortion. It demands also that we show a genuine love and compassion for those many people who are caught up in abortion. Okay, in this country, abortion is legal because apparently we believe it is a woman's right to choose whether she wants to have a child or not. People who hold to that and you know this, call themselves pro-choice. Their slogan, "A woman's right to choose," is everywhere and has really, really entered the collective psyche, if you like. Everybody knows that. Abortion, women's right to choose. But what do we mean by choice? Today, when a woman discovers she's pregnant, she is faced with an immediate decision to make. Either do I have the baby or do I not have the baby? It was not always like that. It was not always like that. 20, 40, 50 years ago and more, when a doctor confirmed to a woman that she was in fact pregnant, and if that was obviously a bit of a problem for her, he would say, "Is that a problem for you? What is the problem? What is your situation at home? How much support do you have at home?" And the whole context of that conversation was, you are pregnant, you have a child inside you, how can we support you with this baby? How can we best support you? That is not the context any longer, and that's very different. So now a woman presents, it is confirmed she is pregnant, and the doctor says, "What are you going to do about it?" And she doesn't know what to do about it. She's not very sure what to do about it, and she's very aware that she doesn't have a lot of time to think about it because the baby is growing at the rate of knots. They always encourage you to have an abortion earlier rather than later. It's better for the woman. She doesn't know what to do. And she's shell-shocked, you know. So she discovers she's pregnant. Her circumstances are poor for whatever reason, which seem very good and powerful to her at the time. So she chooses not to go on with her pregnancy. Okay, here is the first problem with this notion of choice. We are not talking about a choice between having a baby and not having a baby. We're talking about the choice between having a baby and having an abortion. And that's a very different thing. The false expectation that abortion can turn back the clock leaves many women totally unprepared for what will follow. They're not told about any psychological fallout or any significant side effects whatsoever. They're told very little about the abortion procedure itself, except that it's safe and simple, especially in the early stages of pregnancy. When a woman presents confused, under pressure, there can be nothing easier than to confirm all her fears and anxieties and assure her that abortion is the only viable answer. I am not saying these doctors and these medics, generally nurses, are bad people. I am saying, though, that they are very misguided. They do it for the women in front of them. They think this is the best solution. And when she is panic-stricken, then it's obvious you're going to say, "Listen, it's okay. It's okay. This baby does not have to ruin your life. You can go on as before, have the abortion, you'll be fine." What happens is the reality of the abortion is kept very carefully from her. In 2001, all members of the United Nations adopted by consensus the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which is a consensus that is renewed every single year. That Platform for Action states quite clearly that all women must be fully informed of their reproductive options, including potential side effects. It states clearly that consent for all women's services must be voluntary and informed, and specifically condemns forced abortion as an act of violence against women. How many women, and I have met a lot of them, shattered and broken by the painful knowledge of what they have done and cannot undo, look back enraged on those consultations at the family planning clinic, and wonder why no alternative was even mentioned. The vast majority of women at this stage are genuinely looking for counselling, but the information they get is inadequate, and in their vulnerable position, the decision is made for them. I was with a girl only 2 days ago who is now in our second, she's carrying our second child. But when she was pregnant the first time, she was only 14. She was incredibly young. However, her mum was supportive of her having the baby. She had support there, and there was no question in her mind or her mother's mind or the boyfriend's mind that she was going to have an abortion, and yet she was referred to a nurse in another hospital, unbeknown to her. So all she knew was she had an appointment to go to in another hospital at such and such a time, and she went, and the first thing the nurse said to her when she went in was, "So why do you want this termination?" "I don't want a termination." The assumption was made that she would obviously be having one because she's only 14. And you know, if a girl is teetering on the edge or wondering whether she should or whether she shouldn't, that girl's mum was ferocious, a ferocious wee Glaswegian you wouldn't mess with. And that's good, because that saved that child's life, you know. That saved that child's life. So, here is the second problem of choice in this context. How free is it? How free is that choice? A pro-life feminist called Frederica Matthews Green, doesn't roll off the tongue very easily to me, anyway, once said, no woman chooses abortion as she chooses to have an ice cream or drive a Porsche. She chooses an abortion as an animal caught in a trap chooses to gnaw off its own leg. That quote was actually disseminated all over the place by big abortion providers, people like Planned Parenthood and people like that. But what they consistently forgot to mention was the second half of her quote, which said, "Abortion is a tragic attempt to escape a desperate situation by an act of violence and self-loss. Abortion is not a sign that women are free, it is a sign that they are desperate." Okay. About 70% of women choose abortion in violation of their own conscience. It's good to be aware of that when you think of these women who have abortions and stuff. They don't think it's a good thing, and they don't even think it's a right thing. If they were asked in a street survey where they stood on abortion, they would say it is morally wrong. And at the Pro-Life Initiative, where we work, we have met countless women who have been members of their pro-life groups in school and in university, but who now find themselves in this incredible crisis and don't know what to do. They're genuinely considering abortion. Sometimes they go ahead with an abortion even though it goes entirely against their maternal instincts. So really, an abortion experience is often a violent experience. It entails the betrayal of something that is very dear to them, like their conscience, their principles, their maternal instincts. It involves losing an integral part of her very self. We need to think about this. You know, all the literature on this subject, and this makes me crazy, talks about unplanned and unwanted pregnancies. Unplanned and unwanted pregnancies, just trips off the tongue. Unplanned does not equal unwanted. It doesn't equal unwanted. Many a woman discovers she's pregnant, she didn't plan it, but very soon, you know what, the thought of this wee baby inside her, the thought of a new life growing within her, really moves her, strangely delights her. She loves the thought of being a mother. That's a very common experience. So unplanned does not equal unwanted. Unplanned and unwanted pregnancy, yes, okay, the pregnancy is unwanted, but not necessarily by her. To say a pregnancy is unwanted means that somebody didn't want it, but not necessarily the mother, and often not the mother, actually. So, abortions are often chosen for the sake of something else, is what I'm saying, for something she considers to be a greater need at the time. Is abortion the killing of a human child? Yes. Yes, of course it is. Does the woman driving to the hospital to have her abortion think to herself, I'm going to the hospital to kill my baby? No, she doesn't. She doesn't think like that. Maybe some do. You know, I'm not denying, you know, there are some people who know exactly what they're doing and want to destroy the life of their baby. You have to allow for that possibility, and that's, you know, God will sort that out as he will sort all the rest of us out. God is the judge here. But the vast majority of women do not go with that thought. They know deep down that abortion is the killing of a human child, but they are desperately trying to suppress that fact so that they can focus on the positive reasons they're having for having this abortion, you know. Because it's true what Bishop Hugh says, you know, everybody knows it's a baby. There can be no ambiguity, no doubt. Science has just proven the thing back to front and inside out. Human life, from conception right to the end. 20, 30 years ago, you heard it said very often, sure, it's just a blob of jelly, you know, blah, blah. Nobody says that anymore. That's idiotic. Everybody knows it's not a blob of jelly. The issue has changed. It's not about whether you're having a blob of jelly or not. It's about, I know I'm having this baby, but there are other things that have a greater priority for me, I suppose. Certain things are more important for me at this present moment in time. So she suppresses the fact she's having an abortion for some other positive reason. That could be to hold on to a partner, to stay in a relationship. Maybe he's not interested in having children yet or at all. And I just have to say, as a wee parenthesis, this is the saddest and most tragic reason ever. We have met so many women who have had an abortion because they were afraid that their boyfriend or husband didn't want it. And for the sake of him, they get rid of the baby. And I am telling you here and now, not one single relationship in those circumstances has stayed together. Not one relationship has been sustained for all sorts of reasons. First of all, if a man, and I am not downing the men here, I don't want to give them a praise. I've tried to tout the cause of men all the time, and they say, yes, sister, you'll know, that's why you never married one. Anyway, but you know, men are not all bad, I promise. But, you know, the thing is, the man who says, I love you, but I don't love this baby, I don't want this, is not really the kind of man you want to hang about with. That's the first reason. So he just walks anyway. And if he doesn't walk, how can you have this relationship with someone when you know what has gone on there, what has happened? It's very difficult to really love someone like that and to respect them and to what, it's just very difficult. It's very difficult. And so those relationships never last. And you say that to them, but it falls on deaf ears because, you know, they love each other and all. Anyway, it could be that the child has been conceived through some kind of affair, which is always a complicated thing. It has to be kept hidden then. A woman recently had conceived a child with her manager. Not a good idea, ever. And so she was worried about her job, and it was very difficult. Maybe she's in dire straits financially, or at a critical stage in her career or her studies. So she reckons it's better for her, and for her baby ultimately, to have an abortion this time and wait until she's ready to have children in the future. So she's always given a positive reason. So I'm saying this because sometimes you find people who are at abortion clinics maybe, or hospitals, and they say, do you realize you're aborting your unborn baby? Actually, yes, she does realize it. That's not very helpful. She is aware of the fact. She just genuinely doesn't know what to do in her circumstances. And the trouble is, of course, she may well go on to have other babies, but she'll never have that baby again. And those reasons she put up for going ahead with the abortion just don't seem that very convincing anymore. And meanwhile, it has to be said, pro-abortion and pro-life researchers all agree that women who want their babies but abort anyway, for whatever reason, are more likely to have mental health problems. So there's free consent and a lack of freedom all at the same time. True freedom is the freedom to avoid those choices we know we will regret. There may have been a whole load of voices during her pregnancy, giving strong opinions, guiding, persuading, coercing her into having an abortion for all sorts of brilliant reasons. But you know what? At the end of the day, it was her decision. She had to sign the consent form. She went to the abortion clinic on her own. And all she knows is that she did a really terrible thing and she doesn't know how to sort it. That's all she's left with. She alone bears the burden of what she did. We go on and talk about a woman's right to choose when literally thousands of women maim themselves medically and spiritually because they made an urgent decision at a time when they were too distressed and misinformed to understand the full implications of their choice. These are not isolated cases I'm talking about. This is an awful lot of women, an awful lot of women. She grieves. Every day she grieves the death of her unborn child. And nobody knows. Because nobody talks about it at that level. It's a political issue and, it's come up again now. But there are women grieving out there the death of their baby. And they're not allowed to grieve. And one of the crippling, and this is the other thing I want to talk about, one of the crippling and destructive consequences of abortion is that silence that surrounds it. She grieves, but her grief is forbidden. I don't know if you've ever experienced a bereavement yourself, but it's amazing sometimes how even blank strangers, with a kind word of comfort, can make all the difference. It's strangely comforting when even a blank stranger comes up to you and says the usual, almost platitude, but well-meaning, I'm sorry for your loss, you must be very upset, I was sorry to hear it, I'm saying a wee prayer for you. It does make a difference to us. Why? Because when folk acknowledge our grief, they also acknowledge the legitimacy of our loss. They basically validate our feelings. By their understanding, they share something of our burden, and we no longer feel totally alone. As well as that, they also show a certain love, respect, not only for us, but for the one who died. It's not like that with abortion, because we're living in a society that neither expects nor permits grief. Nobody comes up to a woman who's had an abortion and says, I'm sorry for your loss, you must be really sad. Because we're too busy telling her, good for you, hen, you did the right thing, that's great, you can get your life back together again, Are you going for that promoted post? Are you doing it? And she is very sad. She's very sad. There are lots of reasons for that silence. Many of the reasons are in the woman herself. Okay, obviously enough, it was a very horrible experience, it was a very difficult experience for her, and she doesn't want to talk about it or think about it. She would rather suppress it, obviously. Also, it was her choice. She's left with that legacy that this was her choice. She has no right to be upset. And this is often reinforced by people who will say, listen, what are you crying for, This is what you wanted, hey? And she goes, yeah, I suppose it was. So she doesn't say anything. Then she's afraid of rejection from people she loves. She has all these existing relationships. She'll maybe form new relationships. And all the while in her head, she's thinking, if they really knew what I was like, if they knew what I had done, they wouldn't even walk on the same side of the street as me. That's what they think, a lot of them. And then there's just the sad fact that she thinks she entirely deserves to feel this pain and this guilt and this loss. And it's a way for her to hold on to the baby. She says to herself, I have no right to get healed of this pain because actually my baby is no longer here. My baby has nothing now. So who am I? And she holds on to it because she thinks, if I'm healed of this, I'm going to forget all about my baby. Which is not true at all, but that's how she thinks. So she kind of shrouds herself in silence. But it's also encouraged, and this is very important, this is where we come in, by intimate friends and family. In the immediate aftermath of an abortion, women react in two different ways. Many have a real sense of relief immediately. When she's asked by those close to her and those in the hospital if she's doing okay, she says she's fine. And everyone accepts her answer because, after all, that's what they expect the answer to be. The whole point was she was going to turn the clocks back and go back to square one again. So that's fine. She said she's okay. They're not going to persist. They're not going to keep asking her if she's okay. She's okay. She said so. Other women react differently in the immediate aftermath of an abortion, and they are devastated immediately, in distress, horrified, very, very upset. Now, you're not going to go up to a woman in that situation and say, how are you doing? It's quite clear how she's doing. But But what they'll say is, look, don't worry, this has been a wee bit of a difficult time, it's been a bit stressful, you'll be fine, you've just had surgery, maybe, if you just had surgery. You know, give yourself a wee month and then you'll be okay again. And when that wee month passes, they don't come back to her and ask her about it because they don't want to arouse in her bad feelings. You're not going to keep banging on about this subject. So nothing is said. Nothing is said, again, to protect the woman, to not arouse bad feelings in her. What about the silence of self-proclaimed pro-choicers and, to our shame, people who call themselves pro-life? The reality is that most people still believe abortion is the taking of a human life. They know that. But they say, well, you know, it's a thorny issue. And most of us are prepared to tolerate the deaths of children for the sake of respecting a woman's right to choose. However, that moral compromise is seriously rattled when those same women speak of regret and broken hearts. What do we say to them then? What do we say to them? Do we insist that actually we were right to encourage her to have an abortion? But look at her now, you know. She's not the half the woman she used to be. Her life is maybe spiraling out of control. She has depression. Okay, so let's not say that. Let's just admit we were wrong. We made a mistake. She shouldn't have had the abortion. Is that helpful, though? Will that not make her feel worse? So we don't say anything. Nothing crushes me so much, I have to say, as when good people, and I'm talking daily mass goers, all these people say, well, you know, I don't want to say anything, you can understand. Listen, please let us be clear about this. I understand the reasons that could lead a woman to opt for abortion. But I also understand that abortion is the killing of a human child, and it kills the soul of a mother very often and a father, and has terrible ramifications for the family. It's not judgmental. It is not judgmental. This is key for this time we are living in, which is a wee bit mental. It's not judgmental to take a stance. It's the truth spoken in love. Truth and charity are intimately linked. In God, they are one. They are the one thing, the one phenomenon. I do not love you if I lie to you for the sake of sparing your feelings, because you know what? The lie is out there, and sooner or later, you will be hurt by it. And I would much rather tell you the truth now, compassionately and with understanding, while you can still do something about it. So we must speak in truth and in love. Don't change the subject. Don't compromise the truth. Speak it in love, because the unborn child has no voice of his own. And because as long as you speak with love and compassion, you may well save a life. You may well save a life. You may well save a life while you're standing at a bus stop with a woman you've never even met before. It's just a fact of the case. It can be as mundane as that, and yet it's within your power by speaking the truth, which is not your truth, it's the truth of Christ. You can save a life. Likewise, when you speak about it well and compassionately, where abortion has occurred, you may well give a woman the courage to approach you and tell you about her secret, because she'll look at you and say, there's someone I think who understands. How can it be a solution for a mother to do away with the life of her offspring? What can be more profoundly unnatural when you think about it? Genuine love says, I will help you. I will be with you. I will walk with you every step of the way. There is another way, a much better way, and that is to give her a genuine alternative and support her. And that is what Bishop Hugh was saying. That's what Cardinal Winning wanted to do with his pro-life initiative. So Cardinal Winning, you know, was a feisty character. He was a good man. He was always very pro-life and always spoke up in defense of human life. And that's what happened. In 1997, he was given a sizable donation from somebody in the Archdiocese of Glasgow, specifically to be spent on crisis pregnancy care. He was very specific, this guy, that he wanted it spent on that. And Cardinal Winning was on his way to a press conference, a SPUC, press conference, the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children, and he was giving his spiel. Now, by that stage, that conference was marking, it would have been the 30th anniversary. I can't even count anymore. My brain is frazzled. The 30th anniversary of the passing of the Abortion Act, at which point 5 million babies had already died to abortion. And so he went to this press conference, he gave his spiel, and then that's it. With no, I mean, that's what I love about him, I suppose, you know. We're so bound by committees and meetings and you know, nothing gets done. He just got up there on live telly and said, I am proud to announce to you. And everybody behind was going, you know, one of these, wow, what's he saying? What's he saying? And what he said was, if you want help to cope with raising the baby on your own, come to us. We will help you. Us is the Archdiocese of Glasgow. There was nothing in place. Great. Come to us. We will help you. If you want to discuss the adoption of your unborn child, come to us. We will help you. If you need financial assistance or help with equipment for your baby and feel that financial pressures will force you into having an abortion, come to us. We will help you. If you cannot face your family, or if pressure in your local community is making you consider abortion, come to us. We will help you. Oh no, panic. And you know, this is a classic Cardinal Thomas Joseph Winning, may he rest. He phoned exactly that. He phoned Roseanne Reddy, as she was then, and she said to him, she always called him boss, and she said, boss, what have you done? You lunatic, was the subtext there. And he said, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. And he was right. It was all right. It was all right. And you know, there was a terrible media backlash. You know, the headline said, church bribing women to have their babies, or church's new cash for babies scheme, and all this tripe. And a lot of people, and that was sad now, right enough, a lot of pro-life groups who had done fantastic work in the 30 years and more before that, started to get all uppity. And you know, who did he think he was? Well, he was a prince of the church. He was a bishop speaking in the name of Christ. He knew that these groups were in operation and admired them a great deal. But it bothered him that there was no group in the name of Christ and his church. And he felt there should be. The church has always taught against abortion. But you cannot tell a woman not to have an abortion if you're not going to give her a real alternative, if you're not going to help her make the right choice. And that's why he started it. And the truth of that is there for everyone to see, because we see countless women. You know, I asked Gail, who works with us, for the latest statistics, which I'm never very sure about myself, but she said that since '97 we've helped roughly 5,200 women. Now, that help could be anything from a scabby wee sterilizer, or you know, the whole gamut of material goods and a lot of financial help and a whole lot of emotional help invested in it. It doesn't matter. But for whatever reason, you know, and however it worked, we were there. We were an encouraging voice for her. So we have this centre in the south side of Glasgow. I am so sorry. I have no idea when I started speaking, and that's a perilous thing. Are we okay? We're still in the land of the living. Okay. So the story is, we have this centre in the south side of Glasgow, and we help women from all over the UK. We help women of all ages. The youngest girl we've ever helped was 12 years of age, and the eldest lady was about 46, I think. Most of the women come to us are not Catholic. They have all sorts of creeds and none whatsoever. So it's a funny thing, you know, sometimes you'll get literally people on the phone saying, I'd like to speak to Cardinal Winning, please. And you say, I'm sorry to say, he actually died 10 years ago, or 11 years ago now. They don't have a clue about the church. They don't have to have a clue about the church. They've never had any contact with it. So it's very important that their contact be really loving and compassionate. You know, it's a big responsibility as well, and they have no notion what a sister is. Like, no Abel's notion in the world, what that's all about. And so you get funny scenarios where I was with a girl a few years ago, and she was 15 and she was having her baby, and I went to her house to deliver the pram and the cot and the clothes and all this. And this woman was a Catholic, this girl was a Catholic, and her mum was very anxious to, state the fact that she is a Catholic and, yeah, Catholic and all that, So you're like, that's good, it's fine. You're getting the stuff anyway. I don't mind where you're at, but anyway. But she said, "Sister, would you like a cup of tea?" I said, "Surely. I never refuse a cup of tea." And then she said, "Would you like to look at Sarah's first Holy Communion video?" Clearly the answer to that is no way. But I said, "Sure, yeah, let's do it." So we sat and we did it. And that's great. So there she was with her meringue dress, and it was lovely in St. Thomas's. And then as I was leaving, the wee girl, who was a real cutie, she was a wee sweetie, said, "Sister, have you got any kids yourself?" Whereupon her mum nearly scalped her so hard. I was like, it's okay. Oh my gosh. So they have very little contact with the church or a notion about the church, and that's okay. It is a privilege. I don't say that lightly. It's a great privilege to work in Christ's name. And it's a very moving thing, because when you speak to these women, and their initial meeting at the start of their pregnancy is a very fraught one, they're very distressed, they're talking to effectively a blank stranger about things that are very personal and very difficult for them and so on. That first meeting, can be a tearful one and all that. But as time goes on, and if they want prolonged contact and stuff, then they get to know you, then they get to ask you things, and then they get to ask you why you're wearing that horrible black dress, and do you wear that all the time, and what are you all about? Have you got a boyfriend? No. All this kind of stuff. And it's good. It's a great opportunity because you're building them up in some way, you're building a relationship. It's a real thing, and it's founded on something which is much better than they are maybe used to. So these women come to us in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Now today, I'm not 100% sure about the statistic, but certainly over 7 million babies have died to abortion. That's a hell of a lot of babies. That's a lot of women out there who have been directly affected by abortion. A lot of women, a lot of men as well, who struggle with their involvement maybe in that abortion decision, or who struggle with the fact that they have no rights whatsoever over their unborn child. None whatsoever. If a woman wants to go ahead and abort her baby, he has not got a thing to say. So they struggle. And but we have to be, so what I want to say here is, people often talk, and you see it in the media, what kind of women have abortions, who are the classic types? And there is no kind of abortion. And this is why I think it's very important, kind of women who would have an abortion. That's why I think it's very important, the manner in which we talk about it. A few years ago, we were working with a girl who was Catholic. She was Catholic. I'm telling you that most of them are not Catholic, and all my examples are Catholic. But anyway, she was Catholic. She was married. The marriage was in bad shape. They already had a child. She was pregnant with a second child. And the couple together, nobody else knew about this, the couple together decided that for the sake of the marriage, they would abort this baby because the marriage couldn't sustain the strain of this new baby. So that's the way they think. So she went ahead and had the abortion, and sure enough, within months, the marriage had absolutely collapsed. And that Christmas, she was with her family. She had a very large family. She had about 8 or 9 brothers and sisters. They were all around the table, plus extended family, on Christmas Day. And for whatever reason, the conversation got round to abortion. And her brother, one of her favourite brothers, said, and he said it like that, what kind of a woman would have an abortion? Who would do that? And there she was, eating her scabby turkey and Brussels sprouts, thinking, I'm that kind of woman. I'm that kind of woman. I'm your sister, and I've had one. And now he would have been devastated to know he had done that. But he did it without thinking, because you think to yourself, you're in these circles, it's all safe, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Nobody I know would do something like that. It's just not true. As far as pregnancy is concerned, I don't think you can underestimate how much of a crisis it really can be for people. For some, and if the circumstances surrounding the abortion are really particularly poor, it can be a real trauma in the truest sense of that word. You know, as in the predominant feelings are feelings of fear or horror or despair. She wanders about in a trance, in a daze. She's not particularly thinking about, she's not particularly thinking with the rational part of her brain. And she is very susceptible to people's reactions round about her. That's how she's going. So, let me give you one example, and then I might wind this up, lest we die in the very act, lest I come here to kill you all, which would be a headline. So let me give you an example of how it is. Now, there's a 19-year-old girl I know called Amy. Let's call her Amy. She was pregnant, experienced that very scenario I mentioned before in the doctor's surgery. The doctor says immediately, what are you going to do? She says, I don't know. I'm going to consult a few people. So, Amy is in second year at university. She's been going out with her boyfriend for 2 years. She's madly in love. It's all fantastic. In her garden, everything is rosy. Then she's pregnant, and it's a disaster for her because she's wondering about her degree. She's wondering what her boyfriend's going to think. She hadn't planned for this. And so she goes to her boyfriend and her dear boyfriend, and I am not downing the men, but her boyfriend says, no, I'm not interested. This wasn't part of the deal. And so I want to say to the men here, I'd like to say to the men here that your reaction in this kind of scenario is really pivotal. I'm not one for statistics at all, but you know, 80%, a child is 80% more likely to be born if the father of that baby is on board. 80%. A woman's mother, her sister, her best pal can be really pro the baby. If he is not, then she is 80% more likely to abort. It's a lot. That's a lot. And I remember almost going ballistic at a man who was, so we were working with this woman. She had 3 children already, all to the same guy. Now she was pregnant with her 4th, and he felt he could not say anything to her, you know. And she was going ahead with this abortion because she thought he wasn't interested and he wasn't supportive. She got all the way to the hospital, was all gowned up and ready to go, and he's at home praying to God that she wouldn't have the abortion. And she's having it because of what she thinks he thinks. And so I say to this guy, do you think that maybe in this instance, instead of praying to God, you could actually just speak to your girlfriend and tell her what you think? But you see, the problem is the men are always being told, this has got nothing to do with you, this is a woman's decision, you have no right to say anything. Yes, you do. For all the rubbish that's spoken about that, this is your baby. And what she really needs to know is you're there. You will support her. So, listen, the circumstances might be really bad. It might not be a great time. It might not be what you intended. But see if you turn around to her and say, do you know what? It's okay. There are worse things. There are worse things than a baby. It's okay. You know, maybe my family can help. If you just say that, don't pretend it's Shangri-La. Just say, look, it's okay. We can deal with this. It's okay. That will make all the difference in the world. That will make all the difference in the world. And then this girl, Amy, so she goes to her boyfriend and he says, no, thank you. So she's devastated. Then she goes to her best friend. And her best friend has been best friends with her since they were 5. And she says immediately, oh my God, that's a disaster. What are you going to do? Because it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. Because she is very susceptible to people's emotions and reactions. And if you say, that's a disaster, you are just reinforcing the inside her already. That's what's happening there. And in circumstances like that, with those 3 things, the doctor, the boyfriend, the pal, what are the chances, do you think, of that girl going ahead and having her baby? They are very slim. They are very slim. And many a one aborts her baby in those circumstances. There are other reasons, there are other people, there are other scenarios. I want to finish with this. The hardest nut to crack sometimes, we see people who are in their, we see early teens, 15-year-olds. And just one good story, though, about the power of prayer. We had this 15-year-old who was pregnant, wanted to keep her baby, but her social worker and her mother were absolutely horrified and desperate for her to abort and really pushed her. And on that day she had her abortion booked, we had a group of third years in who would have been the very same age as this girl. And we said to him, listen, you need to pray. You need to pray for this girl because at 2 p.m. today she's going for an abortion. Oh. So they were all praying like crazy. And we got a phone call while the school was still there. And the girl said, I didn't go through with it. So that was great, you know. But this is how she didn't go through with it. She was already in the taxi, which social work had got together for her, with the social worker, going to the hospital to have this abortion. And she did not want to have this abortion. And while they're in the taxi, this is a true story, the taxi swerves to avoid killing a rabbit. And she said to herself, what the hang are we doing? You know, we swerve to not kill a rabbit, and where am I going? And she caused such a stink in the taxi. She just had a major tantrum, which is good. And they turned the taxi around and she left. The social worker was raging with her. Her mother was raging. But she was a tenacious wee thing. But you have to be a tenacious wee thing these days. So we were able to say, look, you see, prayer works. And so it does. And, you know, he works in the rabbits. He works in anything to save a life. But we work with people who are in their 30-plus category, and they are the hardest nut to crack very often. And it's good to be aware of those issues. She's maybe been contracepting for years. She cannot believe how stupid she's been as she sees it. She's been in several relationships. She's looking for Mr. Right. He hasn't appeared yet. But meanwhile, she just got pregnant to this guy. Maybe she already has children who are teenagers and she doesn't want to go back to that baby stage again. This is what we'll look after, what Blessed John Paul calls the contraceptive mentality. It has really taken hold here. There can be a real ingrained selfishness and unwillingness to allow your life to be inconvenienced in any way or changed in any way. That's a very compelling motive for a lot of women who are just that wee bit older. Materialism that we talk about glibly, it's right here, right now. So, a real concern of a woman who was just in the office the other day was that she didn't know whether to go on. There were lots of issues, but the reason she cited was that she didn't want to give up her skybox. And this is not a callous woman, and even you wouldn't look at that woman and, oh, you know, she's fine. But she was genuine, and she had no idea how absolutely appalling that sounded. So let me get this right. We're weighing your baby in the balance with a skybox. And she's thinking her skybox is beneficial to her other kids. How, I cannot imagine. The idea that another child in the house, a brother or sister for her other children, will be of greater benefit, will be like a gift to that household, does not even enter her head. Children now are a real nuisance, an expense, not a gift. For all these women, the problem is not the baby, it's the problems surrounding the baby. Most of the women we see would rather keep their babies. If they have a genuine alternative, then they take it. And the key problem is the sense of isolation they feel. They're really isolated and alone because when they discover they're pregnant, one, they come to discover that the father of the baby wasn't all he was cracked up to be. A woman once said to me, nothing rivets the mind on Christ. What is it? Nothing rivets the mind on Christ as well as death. There's nothing like death to rivet the mind on Christ. Let's say in the right order, which is a true story, I'm quite sure of it. Well, there's nothing like a fruitful encounter to make you look at the person you have been sleeping with. And I mean, if she'd been sleeping with him, there'd be no trouble whatsoever. Who she'd been having sex with, there's nothing like that to really realize, oh my word, I do not want this guy to be the father of my children. And so they get rid of them. A lot of the women are isolated because of their own doing. You know, they're pushing people away, they've been hurt and all the rest of it. Likewise, they have friends, they socialize together, it's all great. When one of them gets pregnant, it's a bit of a drag. They're not drinking much and they're not going out as much and everything is changing there. family networks. We talk to the Union of Catholic Mothers quite often, and it is inconceivable to them that, the level of breakdown in the family, And it's true, when I first started working in it, I thought, women can be completely on their own. They are completely on their own. They have literally nobody. So what we do is not rocket science. It doesn't have to be. The pro-life movement is about being there for and providing for pregnant women in need. If we look after the mothers and fathers of these unborn children, then they themselves will look after their children better than anyone. No one is more pro-life than a mother or father. We look after them, the babies will take care of themselves. The aim here, the hope, the goal is to convert hearts and minds, though, because the truth is, we could actually revoke the abortion bill tomorrow, that law tomorrow, and it wouldn't make any difference because people still believe abortion is the answer. And while that is the case, nothing will change. That is the culture of death right there, that very thing, that death is a solution. Death is a solution to your problems. It was never like that for God. God never saw death as a solution. He doesn't still. So Pope Benedict said, life is beautiful. Even when lived out in difficult circumstances, it is always a gift. And I'll just finish with this, actually, because it's going on for too long. Pope Paul VI said, I always love his writing, actually. His quotes are so beautiful. Despite its hardships, its hidden mysteries, its sufferings, and its inevitable frailty, this mortal life is a most beautiful thing, a marvel ever new and moving, an event worthy of being exalted in joy and glory. That's it. Thank you.